Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and in today's video I'm upgrading the last precon in the series, Scions and Spellcraft from the Final Fantasy set. Previously I upgraded all three of the other precons. If you want to go check those out, I'll post the links above. However, in today's video I'm going to be upgrading this one. I'm going to be talking about the new cards, discussing some of the reprints, and then later on talk about 10 cards to take out and 10 cards to put in. And so now without further ado, let's get it started. In this commander deck, you will receive two different commanders that you could choose from: the front-facing commander Y'shtola Knight's Blessed or G'raha Tia Scion Reborn. So let's read them individually and see which one we want to build around for this upgrade. Y'shtola Knight Blessed, for 1 white, blue, and a black, it's a legendary creature, cat warlock with vigilance. At the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. And she has a 2/4 body, so overall this commander is extremely powerful. I already made a deck tech about this commander when it was first spoiled, and it is a powerhouse. But let's take a look at the secondary commander, G'raha Tia Scion Reborn. For 1 white, blue, and a black, it's a legendary creature, cat wizard with lifelink, and it has the ability whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay X life, where X is that spell's mana value. If you do create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token and put X 1/1 counters on it, do this only once each turn. So in a weird way, this kind of reminds me of like a Shark Typhoon, which will get you creature tokens on the battlefield. Of course, you have to pay life into making that token with this commander specifically. And to be honest, I am a bigger fan of Y'shtola. She is a powerhouse, and if you were to build this upgrade, I feel like Y'shtola would be the better option. But don't get me wrong, G'raha Tia is also an excellent choice. I feel like if you choose one or the other, you're not going to necessarily have a bad time. This deck is essentially Spell Slinger. You're just casting a lot of non-creature spells so that you could get value. And of course, it has a little bit of a card advantage theme, which will help you accelerate your game plan. Also in this deck, you will receive a ton of new cards. I just wanted to talk about my personal favorites that'll help you accelerate your game plan. The first one up is Tataru Taru. Try to say that 5 times fast. For 1 and a white, when it enters, you draw a card and target opponent may draw a card. And it has Scion's Secretary. Whenever an opponent draws a card, if it is in that player's turn, create a tap treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So I like this because it's essentially a Selfless Spirit. You're giving your opponent card draw, but that's not a big downside because if your opponent draws cards that are not on their turn, you get a treasure token that's tapped on the battlefield. That is pretty powerful. This is providing card draw and ramp for you, especially at a low rate of 2 CMC. Another card that could be pretty impactful is Emmett Selge of the Third Seat. Spells you cast from your graveyard cost 2 less to cast, and whenever one of our opponents lose life, may cast a target instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Do this only once each turn. So this one is quite interesting. It's a spell reducer casting stuff from your graveyard, and of course it can help you cast those instant and sorceries which your commander want to be doing anyways, and if they are a little bit more expensive, he could cost reduce them too. Another interesting card that kind of goes into that Spell Slinger theme, and I'm going to completely butcher this name, Ravishgur of the First Brood. It has Flying Vigilance and Ward 2, and when it enters and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. And first of all, I gotta say, it's cool. I love how it's an Elder Dragon. I think this can be quite powerful again in that Spell Slinger theme, giving our creatures unblockable. Feels very reminiscent to that one otter that gives unblockable to your creatures whenever you're casting non-creature spells. I'm trying to remember the name. I think it's Bria Riptide Rogue. But let's move on into another card, Hermes Overseer of Ephilis. For 3 and a blue, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying and vigilance, and whenever you attack with 1 or more birds, scry 2. So this kind of reminds me of Murmuring Mystic. I think it's actually basically the exact same wording in some ways, besides giving that bird vigilance and giving that scry ability. Either way, it's still going into that Spell Slinger theme where you want to make sure you can go wide with a bunch of creatures and get that value of scrying. Another card I find very fascinating in this deck is Papayamo Totolimo. Some of these names are pretty crazy, but this one is quite good even as a commander by itself. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. That is quite powerful, especially in this type of Spell Slinger theme. And it has another ability. You pay 4 mana and tap it, sacrifice it. Each opponent who lost life this turn sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control, so it acts like an edict effect. But really, I like it for that first ability. This is low at cost, can gain you life, and deal each opponent damage. All at that rate is pretty good. And the last card I wanted to highlight is Estinin Varlinyu. For 2 white and a black, it's a legendary creature, Elf Warrior. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it gains flying until on a turn. And at the beginning of your second main phase, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of opponents who were dealt non-combat damage by Estine or a dragon this turn. So I like this. This is cool. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be good for the deck, but it can draw you cards by itself, and if you have another dragon out on the battlefield, like Ravishker, you can get additional value too. So those are some of the hot new toys that are in the deck. I also wanted to focus on some reprints. There are some great ones that really help out the deck with its power. The first one I wanted to highlight is Torrential Gearhulk. This is incredible. It has a really good ETB and quite abusable of casting a target instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. All on the ETB, and it has Flash 2. This is going to be great, especially because you're in that Spellslinger theme. Also because you're casting a lot of instant and sorcery spells, Archmage Emeritus is also perfect for the deck, because what's better than card draw when you're casting instant and sorcery spells? Some other reprints I wanted to highlight really will help you in the situation where you might be aggroed because your commander might draw a lot of hate. Authority of the Consuls and Propaganda are very good because they will slow down your opponents from attacking you. Another card with Relic of Legends is a perfect mana option in this deck because we want to cast a lot of high CMC spells, and there are a decent amount of legendaries that we could just tap with this ability to cast some of our spells. Another interesting spell to note is Void Rend. This is a great removal spell because it can't be countered and you destroy target non-land permanent. It's any permanent on the battlefield that's a non-land. What more can I say? And there are many other cool reprints in this deck. However, I wanted to shift my focus to the upgrades and talk about 10 cards that we should take out. Up first is a card that's more of a meta call if anything else, and that's Crux of Fate. I was kind of surprised that this was in this deck. It's a board wipe, destroy all dragon creatures or destroy non-dragon creatures, which is quite interesting because we only really have like one dragon in this deck. So we're really not going to take advantage of that much unless you're playing against somebody that loves Tarkir and made a bunch of dragon decks. Outside of that, Crux of Fate could go. Another card I'm not a big fan of is Cut a Deal. I'm one of those that is a little greedy and I don't like giving my opponents card draw because they could respond to me because they have more cards in their hand. I don't like that at all, and so this one could be easily taken out too. Applying me not wanting to give my opponents card draw, I'm not a big fan of Coveted Jewel either. I know some people are, however, this is 6 mana, it's quite expensive. You get to draw 3 cards and add 3 mana of any one color, that's great, but of course the big downside is you're going to be giving this to one of your opponents in that situation with the other text. And so for me personally, this could easily been taken out. The same can be applied for Tome of Legends. I'm just not really a big fan of this one. I know some people like this, but it's only going to really give you 1 card draw, possibly a turn. You do have to pay mana into it. There are some better options, especially in higher CMC, that we could utilize. I don't want to go too high CMC, but I don't want to go too low CMC because we want to trigger our commander as much as possible. Another card that could be easily taken out is Lingering Souls. I know we're kind of going into a little bit of a token theme, going wide with some tokens. However, this one is going to give us just a one-off effect by making 2 tokens with flying. For me, that's not powerful enough. I'd rather have some other cards that could better suit this deck. And with this next part, I'm going to get rid of some characters that don't necessarily go with the Spellslinger theme. They do, but they don't at the same time. A prime example of this would be Hildebrand Manderville. I mean, itself is an instant adventure spell, but you're only making a 2/2 zombie creature token at a time, and it is repeatable, I guess. However, there are some better options as far as a Spellslinger goes. The same can be applied for Ardbert, Warrior of Darkness. This focuses more on a legendary theme if anything else, which is kind of what it's going for in this type of deck. However, again, I would rather focus more on Spellslinger because that's what our commander wants to do. Some other cards to consider are Siphon Mind, Into the Story, and Hypnotic Sprite. I don't really like these in the deck, mainly because I feel like they're kind of draft chaff, that they kind of throw in these to beef up the deck a little bit, and they could be easily replaced. And the last card I would take out is White Arasite. It's just going to exile a target non-land permanent until it leaves the battlefield, and it's a mana dork. For 4 mana, this is a little expensive. Again, I'd rather have some other options. And speaking of which, let's talk about 10 upgrades that you should utilize in this deck to boost up its power level. One card that I would suggest as far as removal goes is Dismember. This is absolutely perfect for the deck. Even though it will cost 3 mana, you could just pay into that Phyrexian mana, lose 2 life for each one, and a creature will get -5 -5/-5 until on a turn. What's very important about this is the fact that this can be cast for just 1 mana and some life instead of just 3 mana, but this will still trigger our commander. Also, because our commander has a deals damage trigger, we might as well utilize some curiosity effects like Curiosity itself, Ophidian Eye, and Tandem Lookout. These 3 will be impactful, giving us more card draw, dealing damage to each opponent. Another card that would be very fitting in this deck, instead of having that Crux of Fate in this deck, I would rather have something like Damn that could act as one target removal spell or destroying the whole board. This is cheaper and more effective at what it does, and personally I'm a bigger fan of it. Another card that would be quite interesting in this deck, not a lot of people talk about this one, is Mind Splice Apparatus. This one is criminally underrated. It has flash, so you could cast this on somebody else's turn and trigger your commander at the same time, and at the beginning of your upkeep put an oil counter on it, and instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. So the longer the game goes on, simply means that you're going to get more oil counters on this, and in turn your instant and sorcery spells are going to cost less, which is perfect because there are high CMC. We want to trigger our commander along the way. Reducing those spells will trigger our commander more. Also, this deck does have a decent amount of removal, but I do want to amplify that just a little bit more, especially with some 3 CMC options like Anguish Unmaking or even Toxic Deluge. Both of these are pretty cheap and efficient removal spells that can deal with really anything as far as Anguish Unmaking, and if you want to get rid of a board, Toxic Deluge can basically help you do that. There is also a little bit of a theme of getting token creatures on the battlefield when you're casting non-creature spells. Look no further than Metallurgic Summonings or Shark Typhoon. Both of these are incredible because whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or really any non-creature spell, you're making an XX colorless construct or an XX shark creature token with flying whenever you're casting those spells. Also, Metallurgic Summonings does have a great ability of exiling itself, returning all instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only if you have 6 or more artifacts. This is good because in the late game, if we ran out of gas, we could just return those back to our hand by exiling this thing. And with Shark Typhoon, it does have a little bit of utility if you don't necessarily need it in the game. You could just cycle it away, draw a card, and make an XX shark creature token. So both of these are perfect and could be game winners depending on how huge your instant and sorcery spells are. So I thought I would mention these. However, that is going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on upgrading Scions and Spellcraft. Let me know down below in the comments what are your thoughts and opinions about this deck, and would you add anything else in this upgrade? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, if you can, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.